Hi, good morning. So today is the 3rd of June 2021, and at 8 a.m. London time every week we do a webinar specifically for our ZP Developer Zone members. So I'll sort of jump straight into it. So I put this slide up and saying that the ZP Academy is a really a sort of club or a society for people who are interested in doing biosensor development. We do a webinar every Thursday at 8 a.m. London time, but it's also probably worth saying that we actually do another webinar now at 8 p.m. London time. Now these webinars, which are live streaming, are up on YouTube afterwards. So that means if you can't make the 8 a.m. London time on Thursdays or the 8 p.m. London time on Sundays, no big issue, because you can watch them on YouTube later on. So we have the ZP Academy, and I'm delighted that many of you are on the ZP Academy and with the ZP Developer Zone, and we have a very active forum on the ZP Academy. So just some news. We're doing a live larger webinar on the 22nd of June 2021. We're doing it in conjunction with USN. So we have a new site in the UK, and we have some large sites in Norway. So one of the sites in Norway is next to a university called USN, and we're doing a webinar with them on the 22nd of June 2021. Now, in Vietnam time, it's about 7 p.m. in the evening, so it's quite late. Let's say it's about 2 p.m. London time. So that one will be on MEMS and biomems, and we'll be doing agriculture, aquaculture, and food. So I hope that's interesting to you, and you can sign up for that, and that's free. Just some other news as well from this week. Zimmer and Peacock, we're actually doing the opening talk at Biosensors 2021. So Biosensors 2021, I mean the World or the Biosensor World Congress has been running now for, as it says, for about 31 years, and we're actually giving one of the first talks of that, if not the first talk. Now, so just to say, if you're attending the Biosensors 2021 conference, it'll be online this year, unfortunately because of the COVID-19, and we're going to be giving one of the first talks. It will be semi-technical, but it's also going to be quite kind of commercially orientated, and we'll be talking about sort of the good, the bad, and the ugly from the world of biosensor business, as opposed to biosensor sort of technical. So today we're talking a lot of technical, but in this one we'll be talking a lot of let's say business. So if that's interesting to you, you can look that up online as well. So I often put this slide up and say if you want to ask questions in the ZP forum, then you can join the ZP Developer Zone, and the forum is there. We've got a lot of questions coming in at the moment. A lot of them are actually around sweat, and then one of them was around MIPS from Ali, which is kind of ironic because Hasim is online today with us. I can see Hasim is up, and Ali is here, and so I'll be using one of Hasim's papers to just talk about MIPS. So, but first of all, there's been a bit of a theme recently about wearable sensors, sweat sensing, and cortisol. So I just want to jump into that now. I just want to say answer of the week. I do encourage you, if you have, if somebody in the forum asks a question and you have a great answer, then I would say please go ahead and answer it, because I thought this was essentially a really detailed answer. So we had I was doing a webinar on Sunday at 8 p.m. London time, and the guy was saying, I said that the biosensor our biosensor had a working volume of about 4 microliters, which is a good question because, you know, what's the sweat rate? You know, how much sweat do you need essentially to fill 4 microliters? So Ali had done a sort of a quick calculations. So this answer is up on the forum. I mean, then, you know, he was, you know, able to sort of, you know, give us some back of the envelope calculations and say, you know, that 1 to 100 nanoliters of sweat per sweat glands per minute. So that's kind of interesting. And then there's 100 sweat glands per centimeter squared. Now we know this is variable from person to person, but at least, you know, it's always good to get a back of the envelope kind of approximation about what's going on here. You know, and therefore he's able to sort of make this, you know, that a person who is sweating, depending on who they are, they're giving out between something like 100 nanoliters to 10 microliters per minute, and therefore in 10 minutes it's sort of 1 microliter to 100 microliters. So I thought that was answer of the week because it was very detailed, and I appreciated the effort. So if you've got answers to anyone else in the forum, if you see a question go up in the forum and you have a better answer, and well, not a better answer, just have the answer, then, you know, just please post it. It was good. I was a bit excitable yesterday, and I sort of said to Ali online, you know, that I was. So we've been having a lot of questions about, and you know, this is what we're here about today. Sensors that can go on the skin and continually monitor things in sweat. So we just had a little conversation there about the rate of sweat, which I thought was interesting. Now, so we've been talking about these sweat patches, and I'll put a little link to that. Now, what this is here is some data that we've just put up on the website, but I wanted to sort of, I've never spoken about it in public before, so this will be the first time. What it is we've actually turned one of our screen printed electrodes now into a biosensor for cortisol, and so you're looking at the signal for cortisol at something like 0 nanomolar of cortisol, 2,200 nanomolar of cortisol, and then to show the repeatability of the sensor is pretty good. That they've done it twice here at 4,300 nanomolar, and they've made 2 sensors, and then finally at 6,000 nanomolar. So I'm googling around looking for other commercially available cortisol sensors, and I can't find them, so I'm sort of saying this might be a world first. But one of the things I was excited about was we've been having this whole conversation about sweat, how to collect sweat, the rate of sweat, the electronics for sweat, you know, and wearables in general. And yeah, I mean, at least 2 of the inquirers were specifically interested in cortisol, and then it's kind of, you know, I knew that we would have been quietly working on a cortisol sensor in the background, and on Sunday I apologised and said, look, I can't, I haven't got time to talk about cortisol today, but today I have, and I'm just able to say now that, yeah, we do have a actual cortisol sensor now on the ZP website, which is kind of interesting because I know that some of you who follow us, a few weeks ago we had a fructose sensor up there, and I thought that was pretty cool, and then sort of 2 weeks later we have a cortisol sensor up there. So I think we're good at many things, but rapid development is definitely one of them, and rapid manufacturing. So we have a cortisol sensor, which I was happy about, so I wanted to just announce that. Now, I've been, you know, I've been quite a big fan of this Sensit Smart Potentiostat. I think it's, you know, it's small, you know, it's fairly low cost, but you know, cost is all relative. But in terms of potentiostats, it's nice and small. It's fairly low cost. You know, at Zimmer and Peacock, the whole, you know, sort of raison d'etre is to reduce clinical or laboratory tests down to something that's small. And in the medical field, we call it point of care, and sometimes in field tests, sometimes point of need. But this potentiostat, you know, actually really does show you that, you know, you can really reduce the electronics down to such a small size. Now, what's and just click here, yeah, and that's the potentiostat itself. So I think that's cool that you can make electronics, and that's why electrochemistry is actually such a powerful science. I think it's one of the few sciences where the analytical instrument is actually can be intrinsically so small. But this is really a game changer, because this is the latest electronics for biosensors that ZP has made. I mean, we're now talking. We're now talking something that's smaller than the tip of one of our engineers' fingers. So as much as I like the sense it's smart because it tells the story about how you can make a very compact set of electronics. No, we've actually gone and reduced it down to something like this, and now it's getting crazy. Now, our motivation for this is, what's the future of biosensing? The future of biosensing is making in-field tests so that somebody can rapidly analyze some food or detect some bacteria. That's one of the futures of biosensing. One of the other futures of biosensing is to measure analytes in the sweat. So maybe it's cortisol for stress, maybe it's lactate for exercise, maybe it's glucose for diabetics, but I'm not going to get into the whole clinical conversation on that one. Now with electronics going this small, now the sensors can actually become implanted, because you can see here that electronics is quite small. So some of the programs that we're working on at ZP is to actually take the sensor under the skin and leave it in there as a long-term implantable. So this is a world first as well, that we've not shown any images of this electronics before, but this is something that we're working on at ZP as well. So I thought it was relevant because we've had lots of conversations now in the last few weeks about wearable sensor, sweat patches, electronics for sweat patches, cortisol in sweat, and now I'm able to say, look, the reason that you should be interested in electrochemistry and biosensors in particular, well, if you're going to make a biosensor, then and it's going to be for biological or chemical markers, then I would definitely suggest electrochemistry is the right science. And if you were somebody in your university or your company said, well, why? You say, well, look at the electronics, look how small these guys can make it. Okay, so that's just something I was kind of happy to have a little chat about this morning. I'll put some links up to that later on. So in summary, recently we've been asked a lot about cortisol sensors. Now there's a cortisol sensor around sweat patches and electronics for wearables, and you can see that there's really a convergence now of technologies that are coming together in this world that make wearable sensors and sweat sensors quite possible. I don't think it would have been quite so easy 5 or 10 years ago to make a wearable sweat sensor. It would have only been an academic exercise, and it would probably been quite prototypish. But now you can actually get the components and make a fairly good, minimally viable product. So I'm just going to change gears slightly now and just talk about MIPS, molecular imprinted polymers. This is a paper by Hasim, whoops a daisy, and I'm also an author on it as well. So what's happened in this paper is Hasim has taken some of the value electrodes that we have. So I've just kind of zoomed in on that, and he's used the technique of cyclovoltammetry. If you're not sure about cyclovoltammetry, then there's definitely 2 free courses on the ZP Academy that should sort of cover cyclovoltammetry for you. He's done it in the presence of pyrene and 4-vinyl pyridine. So the pyrene was really the template. So I should back up a bit and say he was making a molecular imprinted polymer for the detection of polyaromatic hydrocarbons, PAHs. And what he's done is he's taken one of our gold 303 electrodes, and he's polymerized the 4-vinyl pyridine in the presence of this sort of template here, which is the polyaromatic hydrocarbon, which is pyrene. It's quite. The reason I like this paper is the technique is Yeah, I'm just reading a comment from Philippe, who's just talking about point of care. Yeah, I agree with your comments, Philip. So he's done the electropolymerization of four vinyl pyridine in the presence of the template, and he's essentially put the polymer down on the surface. I think electropolymerization is a pretty cool technique, and I think it also says something about electrochemistry, that you can use it both for the synthesis of your materials, and later on you can use the technique for the sensing of your materials. So in the first part of the paper, he's prepared the material, and let me just so what he's done in the first part is every time he does a cyclovoltammogram, he lays down a essentially a polymer layer, and he does it in the presence of the template. And then what he then does, he does a wash step. So he leaves pores and holes that were indicative of the pyrene in this particular case. So if you're interested in molecular imprinted polymers, I think a good way of making MIPS, if you're going to do an electrochemical type sensor, is to just use electropolymerization. It's quite straightforward, and in this case, it's a sort of, I would say, a two-step process to make the sensor. The first step is to do the electropolymerization. The second step is to do the wash, and then in the second half of the paper, he shows you how to do the actual detection. So I suspect he was using a ferrocyanide, which is interesting because maybe last week we were talking about immunosensors, and so we're using the same redox molecule that we were using in an immunosensor as we are using for this MIP sensor. So it tells you, once you get into electrochemistry, you can get your toolbox together essentially. You can do a lot with actually, by keeping the same techniques and the same chemicals, which I think, in some ways, you can see that 2 weeks ago we put a fructose sensor out, and this week we put a cortisol sensor out there. So it shows you that electrochemistry really is a platform technology that, once you've got your toolbox together of chemicals and techniques, you can do an awful lot with it. Anyway, so he's now going to do the detection of his analyte of interest. So now the technique that Hasim often uses is DPV, differential pulse voltammetry. So I'm guessing that he's using DPV, but every time he adds his molecule of interest, it binds back into the polymer pocket and essentially blocks the surface, and so his signal decreases with additional binding, and so he can plot the peak height. Yeah, I've actually done this the wrong way around, because I realized that the highest at the lowest concentration we have the highest peak, so I should have done it that way, but I can repair that. But he has a signal that's proportional to concentration, so quite simple really. To make the sensor, cyclovoltammetry and a wash step, and to test the sensor, add the analyte, a redox reporter, and he uses differential pulse voltammetry. And it's a good paper. It's nice and succinct, and it's quite robust. It works. And then there's his data from the paper. So I've been quite quick this week because on Sunday we did an awfully long one, about 40 minutes. Last week we overran a little bit, so I didn't want to do that the same this week. But let me just do a summary for this week. Thank you guys for being members of the ZP Developer Zone. Philippe, I noticed now you've been coming quite regularly, so thanks very much. Ali, you do the same, and Hasim, it's good to see you, and hopefully we'll see each other very soon for real. So, thanks for being part of the ZP Developer Zone. Thanks for posting questions and then also answering questions on the forum. It's appreciated. This week we've put out, things that the world, I would say, is kind of screaming out for a cortisol sensor. So I'm happy that we've actually developed it and we've put it up on the website, because the number of inquiries I get about cortisol sensors is quite huge. So we're really pleased that we've done that. And I really think that I'm very interested in making low-cost electronics that are small for biosensors, and you know, it's getting ridiculously small at this point. I don't know if we need to make the electronics any smaller, but we have made them fairly small. So, right. So I think I will wrap up for this week. Just 20 minutes this week, but we've had a lot of overruns recently. So thanks Philippe, thanks Hasim, and thanks Ali. If you've got any questions and you want put them in the ZP forum. If you want to ask questions, join the forum. And we will do a long webinar at 8 p.m. on Sunday. That's more. It's typically more questions. I'm sorry, it's more news. But recently we've had to start bringing questions in as well because of the forum has got so busy. All right, cool. Well, thanks very much, guys. Have a good day. I know I've got some meetings. I'm sure you have as well. And speak to you all again soon. All right, thank you. Cheers, Ali.